Vision. The facility or state of being able to see. Jeremiah 33:3. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and I will show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not. Alright, hey everybody, welcome back once again. So today we're going to kind of talk about how God, he'll give a vision to just one, because sometimes the people around are not really in the right place for the vision in which it is that God has for their lives. I kind of understand this in a whole, because I remember when God told me to leave college, a lot of my family actually thought I was relapsing and going back into my old ways, but God had shared with me a whole lot. And I literally, through this whole process of everything that God has been doing with my family, have been telling them since day one, and no one believed me. Everybody, I still get, stuff like, oh, you're crazy, as, my family starts being restored. How am I crazy? But, a year ago I was telling you this stuff, and now it's happening, and I'm still crazy. So sometimes what happens in our lives is God gives a vision to just one, because some people around us can't really handle the vision which it is that he's giving us in what he wants to do in our lives and the lives of others around us. So it's very key to do the things in which God wants us to do, because maybe you're the key of what helps help others around you, when some just don't see the vision in which you see. And so we're going to kind of talk about that, because for my personal life, I know that there's things that I know that God wants to do in my life and for others around me, and through the ministry that he's given me, and I have the vision, because God has given me the vision. But do I know anyone around me who shares that same vision, which God has showed me through the ministry he's given me? No, because I believe that he's only shared that vision with me through my ministry, in which he's given me so far. So so we're going to kind of start in Daniel chapter 10, verse 7. So it says, and I, Daniel, alone, meaning by himself, saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision. So he alone saw the vision. The men that were around him did not see the vision. But a great quake fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was alone and saw a great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me unto corruption, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard a voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face, and my face towards the ground. So basically what we're seeing is he saw this vision, and there was someone who was speaking to him, and he kind of was trembling and shaking, because he was in kind of astonishment, because there was someone who appeared to him in a vision and was speaking to him, and in his life in which it was. So we're going to kind of turn, and we are going to kind of look at a few other people who actually had visions, and only God spoke to them in general and not the people around them. And so I'm going to kind of look at Genesis 37. So in verse 5 of Genesis 37 it says, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. So he had a dream, which is like a vision. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood around about and made obscenes to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And he hated him yet the more for his dream and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren. Behold, I have dreamed more, and behold, the sun and the moons and the 11 stars had obscene to me. And he told it to his father and his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said to him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come and bow down ourselves unto thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. So basically what we're seeing is that sometimes God gives us a vision or a personal dream in which he has for the lives that require people around us, but the people around us can't really handle what it is that God is trying to show us in the life. We see that Joseph's brothers around him could not handle the vision that God was giving Joseph, and they started to envy him and hate him. But God had a plan, just because, you may not be like Joseph here, Joseph was, and Joseph was going to be over top of his family, didn't mean that Joseph was even more important than his brethren. It was just that God had something else that he wanted Joseph to do in his life. And so because of that, he gave Joseph the dream, because there was a place where God needed Joseph to be, because God has certain plans for all of our lives, and he has a certain place in which he wants us all to be in our lives. Like I think about me as God told me to leave college. If I did not leave college the way I did, like he showed me where he wanted me to live, I'll be moving to Florida. He showed me, like as time went on, like my ministry online has grown, like all my blogs are coming together, like my website's growing, and all my books are coming together. It's not that God was just like, oh yeah, well, Jasmine is more important than the people in her family and all that other stuff. It's just that God has a different destination, a different path in the way that he wants to use me in my life. It doesn't mean that I'm any more special than anyone. It's just that God has something set apart for me, for my personal life and my personal walk, because he knows what he wants to do with me and who he wants to use me to help reach out to, and who he wants to, help use me to touch and reach out to people. So it's kind of like when God gives a vision and dream for someone, it's not now at the current moment, it's in the future, it's to come. And when you think about dreams, like people always say, what do you dream when you grow up? What do you want to be? What are your dreams when you grow up? When you think about a dream or a vision, it's always for a time to come. It's not there in the moment. So Joseph had a dream, and even though it hadn't came to pass yet, even though it wasn't like right there in the face of all the all his brothers, they just hated him for his dream, and it was just a dream. It hadn't came to pass yet. Nothing had happened yet, but just because he had the dream, just because he had the vision, in which it was that God wanted to do in his life, they hated him. They envied him, because they didn't want it to come to pass, because it was just obscene to them, because they didn't want Joseph to ever get into that place in which he dreamed. And sometimes that can happen to us when God just gives a vision just for even if it has to do with, it may be to one person, but it has to do with everybody around, because his vision didn't just include himself, but the vision also included his family and the people around him. But yet they still didn't, like him. And I had to have a conversation with somebody the other day and say, well, like a bunch of my family hated me when I was, on the streets and on the run. I said, but now that Christ told me to leave school and do ministry full time and all that stuff, like y'all still mad at me and mean and like rude to me for what? Like I'm not even on drugs. I'm preaching the gospel of Christ and y'all mad. Like I just don't, it's like something that's just like unbelievable. Like, like you know, I could be out there, you know, like shooting up drugs, you know, would you rather have me do that? Or, you know, so like, that's that's the stuff that gets me upset, because I'm just like, I'm not, you know, shooting up no drugs. You know, I'm not out there gang banging. I'm not out there, you know, I'm preaching the gospel of Christ. I'm helping people. And, you know, but because I'm not going with the norms of society and what society says is right for my life, you know, the American dream type, you know, stuff, then I'm obviously wrong. But because I'm following Christ and what Christ wants for my life, and the better vision in which he says is for my life, you know, a lot of people don't understand that, because, you know, like I said, my vision was for one, and, you know, sometimes God will give the vision just to one because people around them really don't understand. Because I know that when God had me leave school, he was like, I'm going to restore your family. You know, you're building an ark, you know, but some people can't handle the crazy look of faith of building an ark, because they think that, you know, a lot of people in, you know, even the Christian faith believe that great faith is, you know, okay, you know, doing exactly what society says. You know, a lot of people preach, okay, great faith, big steps of faith, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go with the ways of the world too. Well, you know, faith is not always just the ways of the world. Faith is not always, you know, okay, I'm going to have the kids, I'm going to have the white picket fence, I'm going to have the American dream, because faith is not always how, you know, America says, you know, the average Christian family faith person should look like, you know. It's not always, you know, something that's just like, okay, well, my great faith is I got into college and God helped me to get into school, and then, okay, my great faith is now I'm getting married, and my great faith is, you know, because America does that. America can do those things, you know, but great faith is, you know, doing things that seem contrary to what the world would think is, you know, something different. Here, you know, Joseph dreamed a dream, but it was something different, because here Joseph he is one of the youngest siblings, and in society in that time and day and age, how it was the older brother was supposed to be head, you know, once the father was to pass. And God was doing things different from what everybody else thought. Now I look at my life, and, you know, here I am, and I am the, you know, out of control teenager, Jasmine, and I was wild and crazy, yet God is using the person that people thought wouldn't amount to anything, versus, you know, the some of the people that, you know, got, like, everybody was like, oh yeah, you know, they've done things wonderful, versus, you know, look at the person who was the streetwalker and God's using her, you know. So, I mean, sometimes people can't handle the vision in which it is that God gives you in your life, for your life, or, you know, to help affect lives around you. So I'm going to put up the first few questions and we're going to carry on. Are others upset as the vision for your life that God showed you is starting to unfold? Why? Do people not understand why God is doing certain things in your life because it seems out of order? Example, you may be younger, or were a murderer or a drug addict, maybe a prostitute, or you don't have a degree. Something that is contrary to what the world believes is your average Christian. Okay, so when we continue on, one of the things that I really saw is what happened here is, it said that, that Daniel had saw the vision alone. It seems that a lot of the time when God, you know, gives these visions, that the people are always separated in some moment. You know, once Joseph got the dream and the vision, his brothers sold him off to slavery. And so he was there to deal with his issue alone, deal with the problem alone, was separated, because God had a place and a plan for where it was that he wanted to take him. Even within him being sold into slavery, Joseph, you know, God still had a plan for Joseph. You know, God's plan was going to come to pass, you know. But, you know, sometimes, you know, there becomes that point of separation. Sometimes God has to separate you from, you know, certain people in, you know, times of, you know, the vision in which it is that God has for our lives. And so I'm going to kind of show you that somewhere else too. When you think about Abraham and Lot, you know, God had a a vision basically that he wanted to show Abraham, the vision of the promised land of where it was. And he had to tell him, get out of your country to a place where I'll show you. And he brought Lot with him, but he once said, leave your family, leave everything behind. And, it's because his vision was basically for him. It wasn't for Lot. It was for him. And sometimes, what happens when God gives us a vision alone, it's because, it's for you. It's for your life and what God wants to do in your life. And I think about my life, when God gave me the vision and plan for my life, he told me he wanted to give me a family, and I had a hard time believing that because I brought my Lot around and I sat there on the phone, as I went on my journey, and I listened to my family tell me, no, you need to go back to school. This is not right. This is, I don't think this is, but on all reality, I should have been listening to God. Who was I to be listening to my family than the creator over the universe, who was telling me, this is what I have for your life. Will you accept what I have for your life? And sometimes we get so much clouded judgment because we bring people along in our vision that God has for our lives. And we shouldn't, be bringing them along, but God has to separate us from that. And like, I think about, now in my life, like, since I have literally, I've had to sit there and speak to a lot of my family members and look, this is the vision that God has for my life. Like, whether you like it or not, I'm going to continue walking in this vision, and I don't, and they're like, well, you don't listen to any of us. Yeah, because I'm not going to listen to your opinions anymore on what God is doing in my personal life anymore. Because, it's what God wants to do in my personal life, in my personal walk, to help other people out there, and if I'm sitting there listening to you guys in the direction in which it is that God's trying to bring me, I'm never going to get to the place where God wants to bring me, because you guys are trying to keep me here and God's trying to bring me there. And that's kind of how it was with Lot. Lot was, in his way, like, he basically couldn't see, Abraham couldn't see what it was that God had for him until they actually separated. And, you see that in chapter, I believe it's chapter 13, it says, and the land was not, in verse 6 of Genesis, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdmen of Abraham's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelled in the land. And Abraham said to Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between thy herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be both brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me, and thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go right, and if thou wilt depart for the right hand, then I will go left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plain of Jordan, and was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even the gardens of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, and thou comest unto Zor. So basically, after they separated, it says, oh, where is it? And it says, and Abraham dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of Perizzites, and the men. Okay, so basically, like, it comes to a point where it's just like, okay, God was just like, in verse 14, and the Lord said unto Abraham, after Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land in which thou seest, unto thee will I give it to thee, thy seed forever, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that the man can number the dust of the earth. Then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise and walk through the land. So the land, in the length of it and in the breadth of it, and I will give it unto thee. So basically, God gave him a vision, like, this is the land in which I have. But until, like, he was separated from, certain people, he couldn't really see, Lot. He couldn't see the vision plainly and clearly, because a lot of the time what we do is people can cloud our judgment. So, like, a lot of the time when God gives us a vision, for one, even though it includes other people, he separates us because, it can cloud our judgment. Like I said, he wanted to restore my family. He had plans of restoration of my family, but still at the end of the day, he had to bring me all the way to the other side of the United States in California, away from my family just so that I could have a clear, my own, like make up my own mind to understand that, hey, I have a plan for your life. I want to give you a family in your life, and I want you, to have your ministry and all that stuff. Do you want this for your life? And for me, I cared and valued everybody else's opinions because my whole life, that's how it's always been. Everybody always had, an opinion on what it was best for Jasmine and what they think, did I ever choose to go to the group? No, it was like I had to live my life on their opinions and what they thought was best for me. When was I ever going to be able to make up my own mind to do what it was that Jasmine, wanted for her life? There was things I wanted for my life, but I used to hear people say all the time, well, no, I don't think that's for your life, and literally God had to sit there and be like, I know you want this for your life and you can have it, even though they say you can't have it, but I can give it to you, and sometimes God has to separate you so that you can actually get a clear vision on what it is that God, wants for your life. Because a lot of times, people will cloud your judgment on what it is that God really wants to do in your life. And so, sometimes there also comes a time of separation in life because, you're going down a different path. We talk about like, we're going down a different path in where it is that there's kind of like a point of separation because not everybody is going in the same places you're going. And we're going to kind of see that in Acts chapter 9 in this place of separation. And it says, basically we see Saul here, and the same thing happened to him as he was kind of separated, and he heard a voice of God, and he saw a vision of God, and he was with other men, but the men didn't see the same vision as he saw. But it's because at that point in that time God was separating him. He was on a journey to go to Damascus, but in that part of his life as he journeyed, there was a change in his life. There was a turning point in his life. And here he is, he's riding down the street with people who are also with him, who are also persecuting Christians, who are also doing the same things as he is. And then all of a sudden his life is changed. And because his life is changed, he had to at some point separate from the men that he was with, because what he was going to do. Oh yeah, by the way, while we're on the road to Damascus, a light shone from heaven, and it was Jesus, and he spoke to me. And yeah, Jesus spoke to me. Hold on, wait. Jesus spoke to you? Aren't we going to kill Christians? And you're just saying that Jesus spoke to you? Does that mean you're a Christian now and we should kill you? So there comes a point of separation where it's just like, here Saul was, and it says right here, it says, and the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice. That's in verse 7 of Acts 9. Hearing a voice, but seeing no man. They heard a voice, but they saw no man. They didn't see exactly what Saul saw because, they were about to be separated from each other in the places where they were going, because Saul was at a turning point in his life. He was about to be converted, and he was, he just got converted into a Christian and was about to start preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And there was going to be a point of separation. Like I look at my life when God first opened my eyes to the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I understood that Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sin, and that I was a sinner, and that I needed Christ, and that I wanted to go out and tell other people about Christ. I had to separate from the people who I was hanging out with because they weren't going the same direction as me. And that's what a lot of times what happens is there's a point of separation because the people who you're with are no longer going in the same direction as you. Damascus, is known as a turning point. Well, if I'm going left and you're going right, then, we're going in two different directions. Amos 3:3, how can two walk together unless we agree? It's a turning point. It's a point of it's a point of, conversion. I did a blog the other day talking about, being converted. It's going from one direction to the other direction. Okay. Yesterday, I wasn't a Christian. Today I am a Christian. I've converted. I'm going in a different direction. So there comes a point of separation because two people going in two different directions are, going in two different directions. They're not going in the same pathway, same direction. And so there comes a point in time where there has to be that point of separation, because if not, they're going in two directions. And, sometimes when God has a plan for people's lives, they have to separate and go in two different directions because, they have to be in the place and where it is that God needs them to be. Like I said with Abraham had to be separated because God had something for Abraham. He was going to be a father of many nations. The promised land was for Abraham. He said, get out of the place where I will show you, not I will show Lot, like get away from your family. I'm going to show you this because this is what I have for you. Don't bring your family along with you. Bring yourself because this is where I'm showing you and for your life and where you're going. And, even with, even if Joseph would have stayed where he, would he ever be at the place where God would have needed him to be? Sometimes, God will allow certain things to happen in our lives because he needs us to be separated from the people around us, because we won't get to the place and where it is that God needs us to be if we don't separate. So I'm going to put up the next few questions and then we're going to carry on. Okay? Peace. Are you listening to others' opinions rather than God's on the vision he has for your life over God's? Has God separated you from certain people so you can see his vision for your life more clearly? Do you know God has a personal vision for your personal life? Alright, so, when God gives us a vision, and, we're the ones who hear the vision and not really, a lot of people around us kind of hear the vision, there has to be some type of humbling, like we'll see here in Daniel, chapter 10, verse 9, it says, and yet heard I the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face, and my face towards the ground. So, his face was, in some type of, kind of like it was kind of like he was, in a humbling kind of position, sometimes it's just okay, are you really speaking to me? What should I do? Are you sure? You don't really, I remember when God first told me to leave, college, I was, amazed. I was, I didn't know what to do, I wrote a blog about it and didn't even know at the time that I was writing what God was about to do in my life, talking about being humble and discipleship and realizing that God wanted me to, follow him and, I knew, but I didn't really know what I was really getting myself into. I didn't know that this, was going to come as far as it did. He told me, and at first, before everything came together, I was just okay. But, now it's just I see the vision clear, but it was very overwhelming at first. It was very overwhelming. I knew that he wanted me to leave. But I didn't know that me writing my blog was matching up to what, was happening in my life at the time. I knew that the video lessons that I was doing matched, what was happening in my life, that I was, following Christ and that I was, going to set off on a journey. And I knew that, when I was seeking for acceptance, that, it was seeking for acceptance. And when I was talking about, Joseph being sold into slavery and the family betraying them, that was kind of happened to me in my life because, like I said, for me, everybody thought I was relapsing, so I didn't realize it back then, but now I realize it, and it was kind of crazy because when everything was falling apart, it was just falling apart, and I was just oh my gosh. But when Christ has you do something, you just have to kind of get up from where you are and do what you got to do, when Christ calls you. But you're kind of astonished and amazed and oh my gosh, God is really doing this in my life. And sometimes it can be confusing because you can fall to the ground and wonder okay, what's going on, here was Saul, and he was going one way in his life, and the next thing you know, he was getting, knocked to the ground by this light. And, in verse 6 of Acts 9, he's and he trembling and astonished said, Lord, what wilt thou have me do? So here he was going one way in his life, and then all of a sudden he's trembling and astonished that the Lord wanted to speak to him. because it had said, he says, and he fell to the earth, and he heard a voice saying, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me do? As soon as he knew it was Jesus, he was like, okay, what would you have me to do? Like, I asked God before, I stepped out on faith to follow Christ, I asked him, and he gave me the scriptures of Peter walking on water saying, I said, Lord, if it's you, bid me to come. And I kept getting scriptures like, come, come, follow me, and I kept getting scriptures like with Abraham, follow me to a place that I will show you, and he showed me where it was that he wanted me to follow him to. And it's kind of like, when Christ gives us a vision of where it is that what he wants us to do in our life, we're kind of amazed and we're kind of astonished on, oh my gosh, God's speaking to me. God wants me to set off and do this task in my life in which he has for my life, and we kind of want to do, ask him questions like, as soon as he realized God was speaking to him, he's like, what wilt thou have me to do? Like, what do you want me to do, Lord? He was just like, oh my gosh, this is God speaking to me. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, as soon as he realized, this is really God speaking to me, come, Peter was just like, if it's you, Lord, bid me to come. And when, Peter knew that it was Christ, he just went, okay, it's God, it's Christ, I'm going, and that's how I was, when I went to go step out on faith, when God gave me, the vision, okay, step out on faith, I need you to come, I need you to go, there's people I need, I want you to help, and I was just like, okay, God, I'm coming, I was just amazed, like, wow, this is God speaking to me, this is, he's giving me a vision of something that he wants me to do. This is not just something that I'm seeing on my own, but this is Christ giving me the vision, and sometimes we can be amazed and we can be like in awe because we're just like, oh my gosh, God is, really speaking to me, and others around you are just like going on with their life, and you're like, do you hear what God's telling me? Do you hear what God's telling me? And they're like, no, you're crazy. I got plenty of times told by even friends, family members, you're following Satan, the devil, like you're settled, you're fine, everything's okay. And I'm like, no, not everything's okay. I hear God speaking to me, so, but, not everybody understands because, a lot of people think that God just works and generates how they work and how they function, and that's not always how it goes. Here's Saul on the way to Damascus to go kill Christians, and no one expected Jesus Christ to sit there and meet with him on the road to Damascus in the middle of his life. I look at, one of my families actually made fun of me when I left school, and because I was only making a certain amount of money after I left school because God was doing certain things in my life, and they made fun of me and then lost their job right afterwards, and because they're like, a lot of people think, okay, I have a 5-year plan, everything's going to be set. They saw everything set in their life and literally had to, backtrack and, do certain things in their life all over again because God had a different plan for their life, but they thought that their plan was going to work versus what God really had planned for their life. And that's a lot of the time what society will do, is they'll make fun of the person who, is stepping out on faith with Christ, and then Christ will sit there and knock them down on their feet and be like, no, I need you to really understand within yourself too. Like, I'm in control. Like, I'm, and here's Saul thinking, okay, no, I'm in control of these Christians. These Christians ain't doing right in their life. They're not doing the right thing. And, I know what's right. I know what's right. I've been, living this way my whole life. And if they think that they're going to come in my life and, sit here and, try to spread their gospel, then they must be out of their mind. And God sat there and knocked Saul right on his butt and was like, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Why are you persecuting me? And he was just like, cause he's just like, he was breathing threats to the Christians before he left Damascus. And then all of a sudden it says, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. For someone who, was breathing threats to, against Christ and Christians to go kill them. And within 2 seconds, Christ gave him a vision. And within 2 seconds, he's like, okay, Lord, what you want me to do? because all it takes is 2 seconds for God to give you that personal vision of what what he wants you to do for your life, for your whole life to be turned around and completely different, and you to be in awe and be like, oh my gosh, Christ is talking to me. You know, here I am. When Christ approached me, I thought I was doing the right thing for my personal life, you know, because I was doing everything that the world said it was okay for me to do. I was, you know, in school, and I had a 5-year plan. I was going to get my degree. You know, I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to open a group home for runaway teenagers who were prostitutes. I had everything together. I had everything, you know, I was so proud of myself. I couldn't wait to sit there and graduate and, you know, be like, hey, you know, the person who everybody thought wasn't going to amount to anything, look, I have my degree, you know, and like, you know, and here I am, you know, and you guys would have never expected it. And then God said, you're not going in the direction I want you to go. What? I am following you, Christ. You know, I am following you. You know, I am doing the things of God, you know, and it, you know, wasn't right, you know, and I know because, you know, you look at before Saul was even, you know, converted, like he sat there while, you know, with people were stoning Stephen, you know, and he was, you know, amongst all the, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all those people, and they thought they were right. You know, they thought they were right, and they thought they were doing the things the right way, but they weren't doing things the right way because they weren't following Jesus Christ, you know, like, yes, they had their word, but they were religious, and, you know, they weren't believing in Jesus Christ. And there's a difference between being religious and actually following Christ and doing the things of Christ, because anybody can go to church on Sunday. Anybody can read their Bible, you know, but there's a difference between reading your Bible and living in and walking in the Word and doing the things and following Christ and which Christ wants you to do. And I learned that when Christ was just like, follow me. Because I went to church every Sunday. I actually went to Bible study every single day of the week until God said, hey, look, point blank period, you're not going in the right direction in which I want you to go. Skirt, what? You know, like I am like straight, you know, like to the world, I would have been probably a very good Christian. I go to church almost every single day, and, you know, doing my best to try to live right, and, teaching Bible study lessons, and I'm in college and I'm about to get my degree and I'm about to be a social worker and help a whole bunch of people. I mean, what more do you know, like, I just want to help, give, you know, love everybody. Hey, you know, and God still was just like, hey, you're not going in the right direction, you know? And so, you know, it can be very difficult and different because sometimes we think we're going in the right direction when we're really not. And then God gives us a vision of where he really wants us to go. And it can be just to yourself, and people will just think you're crazy, because what were everybody around Saul about to think, you know? Like, yeah, okay, aren't we going to kill the Christians? No, I'm a Christian now, you know, like, it can be confusing. So I'm going to put the next few questions and we're going to carry on. Were you amazed when God first spoke to you when you were going in one way in your life, then showed you a different path for your life? Did you ask God what he wanted you to do when he first spoke to you? Has God had you follow him in a different direction contrary to what the world believes is best? All right, so the next thing I really learned within itself was basically that the vision in which God gives you is for an appointed time. It does not always come to pass right away. It's not always right in your face overnight. It's not boom, bam, hey, you know, like, I'm going to give you this vision and it's just going to come to pass, and, you know, everything's just going to be fine and dandy, because God gave me, you know, I prayed a prayer in 2011 for God to restore my family. It's 2013 and God is now like really restoring my family. Like, I'm seeing the effects of the restoration of my family. And it's been, you know, a few years. And, you know, I'm finally seeing come together when he gave me, you know, and after the vision of him telling me that he wanted to do other things in my life, you know, I'm just now seeing, you know, that stuff hasn't came to pass yet. You know, like, you know, Habakkuk 2:2-3, you know, I did a lesson on write the vision, make it plain. The scripture says, you know, write the vision, make it plain, for the vision is for an appointed time. That means the vision may not be right now. I'll read it for you guys. It's right here. It says in Habakkuk 2, verse 2 through 3, and the Lord answered, and answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it shall surely come, it will not tarry. And so, it comes to pass, but it's for an appointed time. And then, it kind of says that, when we look back in Daniel chapter 14, it says, chapter 10, verse 14, now I am come to make thee understand that what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. That means basically the vision in which God is giving you is for many days. There's going to be many days until, the vision comes to pass, but you have to walk through it, like it says, though it tarry, wait for it, like that means, it's going to tarry. There is going to take some time before the vision comes to pass, but it's going to come to pass. God's going to do it. And, like that, when I first got it, I thought, okay, it's going to happen overnight. But then as I continued, watching, God move, I'm like, wait, this is not happening overnight. Like I think I'm walking through what it is that God had me write down in my life, in my journals. I see that God had me write these stuff down in my journals, and I see that everything, like there was a point in time I wrote in my Bible about Esther and the king and, all this other stuff in my journal. And then all of a sudden I got sent back to Massachusetts, and I went to a Bible study, and everything I wrote in my journal a few months ago, the woman was talking about. And I'm like, okay, this is just confirmation. I'm in the right place of where I need to be. So it's like the vision was tarrying, like I still had to wait to go through the process in which I was. Like I did a Bible study lesson on breaking down walls in my life. God showed me, okay, I'm going to break down walls in your life. You're going to use a friend. God sent a friend to me, and he helped me break down my walls. And here I am a year later, free from, my past, free from that pain. Like I feel like a brand new person inside. I feel clean. Like someone literally, like, when you take a shower and you feel all clean on the outside, like someone like rinsed me out on my insides, and I feel like light. I feel light and free. Like I'm not, heavy or burdened inside. I don't feel numb anymore. Like when people say they miss me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I missed, like, so like the vision, like, it takes a little time, but it will get there, it will get there. And like, and some people just don't, understand that, but, sometimes we have to realize that it does, happen, but it may take a while before it does happen. And, we're going to kind of see that in a few other places. So I'm going to have you guys turn back to Acts. I know I guys have you jumping around a lot. Acts chapter 9, and chapter 9. So basically what happens is in verse 10 it says, right, I'll do verse number 8. And Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were open, he saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was there 3 days without sight, and neither did he eat nor drink. And there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias, and to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias. And he said, behold, here I am here, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, arise and go unto a street called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarshish, for behold, he prayeth, and hath seen a vision, and the man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him, and he may receive his sight. Now, I've read the scripture tons of times, but I've never seen it like this. It says right here, it says, go to a house of a man named Judas for the one called Saul of Tarshish, and behold, he prayeth. But it says, and he hath seen a vision of a man named Ananias. So here God is telling Ananias that Saul has already seen a vision of him before God told Ananias about Saul. So Saul already had the vision of Ananias coming before Ananias had the vision of going to Saul. So God, it's like, it was like Saul was waiting, and all God had to do was tell Ananias, and then Ananias would then come. So it's like, it was like he had a vision. It was for an appointed time, and Saul basically had to wait for God to tell Ananias, okay, go to this street called Straight, and Saul will be waiting there for you. And it says, and he says he saw a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him that he may receive his sight. And so, I mean, it was for an appointed time. It was for latter days. The vision was for latter days to come, a time, like there's always a time in which God does things, especially when God gives you a vision or even a promise, God told Abraham, get out of the country into a place where I'll show you. He wanted to make him a father of many nations. I mean, he had no children. His wife was barren. He was barren. They were barren. But yet, still, after, not until Genesis 21, he told him to leave the country, and that was in Genesis 12. Not until Genesis 21 does Sarah have a child. So there was some time in between where it was that, though the vision, it tarried. It took some time before it got to a certain place and where it was. And so we'll kind of see that again. We're going to go to Genesis, and we're going to look in Genesis chapter 45. And this is basically when Joseph reveals himself to his brother, because basically what God had done was they had sold Joseph into slavery, but Joseph revealed himself to them. He revealed himself to them. So it's crazy, because even when we have a vision, God at the end will really, the whole vision will come together, and everybody will understand at the end that it was really God who, may have, that sent you, that it wasn't, really, that it wasn't really you just having this vision, but it was God that had the vision, and, they may not believe you, because they didn't believe me. They thought I was relapsing. And, I look at myself now, and, now that, because everybody thought, okay, she's not going to have a stable mind, but all, everything that, like, I've had days where people have said something to me, and on that same day, or God will be like, oh yeah, I want to give you a stable home, within yourself, and a stable home for you to stay permanently, or, like, I remember this summer, God told me he wanted to give me, I vowed to him that I'd give him my son, and, if he gave me a child, because I didn't think I could have a family. And so this summer, my brother's girlfriend, is pregnant, and I said, oh my gosh, she's going to have a girl. God revealed it to me. She's going to have a girl. And no one believed me for months and months, because they're like, no, you don't even know what you're having, because you're not even married yet or anything like that. And I'm like, no, God showed me she's going to have a girl. And I bought her all this stuff that was like girl stuff. And then they went to the ultrasound, and I went that day, and they said it's a girl. And I said, yeah, I know, because God showed me already that it was a girl, But everybody got, like, some people got upset, because they're like, how does she know that? Because God revealed it to me and showed, like, at the end, people are just like, well, like, people are going to be kind of amazed and shocked, like, how did God really, like, share with you that, but, like, for me, like, I, like, because God is really, like, healing me inside, like, it's kind of like getting me to really, like, ease myself down and be like, okay, well, who cares that they didn't believe you? Because at the end of the day, like, everything that God told you is going to be revealed, and it's all going to come together. It's all going to come to pass. And, everybody's going to be amazed, and just like, okay, well, we're going to kind of see that with Joseph. In chapter 45, we'll start in verse number 1. And then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, caused every man to go out from me, and there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph, doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, and they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near to me, and I pray you. They came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. And so what really stood out to me when I looked at it, it says, now therefore not be grieved nor angry with yourself that ye sold me, for God sent me before you. So basically, God, you think about if God gave you a vision for your life, and God kind of sent you before that other people, basically to preserve life, to save another generation alone. God told me to quit college and leave college and go to a place where he showed me I was moving to Florida. And about a year later, my grandmother has been planning on moving. I did a video on how my grandma was going to move to Arizona. And at that point in time, she wasn't even hearing where it was that God really wanted her to move. And a year later, God revealed to her, I really want you to move to Florida as well. And, if I had not stepped out on faith to follow Christ, would she have ever really truly heard God say, I want you to go to Florida? Because first it was Florida, and then it was North Carolina, but when we truly go to, sometimes it takes other people to really step out on faith before other people really, take that time to actually die to themselves. And, we think about Saul's conversion. Like, Saul sat there as they stoned Stephen, and he saw the stoning of Stephen, and how Stephen, till the death, stood up for Christ, and then Saul gets converted and preaches the gospel and writes half the Old Testament, because he died to himself. He died to his flesh. He died to his own will to fulfill the vision in which it was that God had for his life. And so sometimes it takes, dying to oneself to fulfill the vision of which it is that God has for your life. You think about Jesus, for the lives of others, think about Jesus Christ as he, took up his cross and he died on the cross for the sinners of the world, because God had a vision. And he gave the vision to Christ, and Christ knew the vision was to die on the cross for the sins of the world, so that people could be saved, so that, that lives could be saved for many generations alive. Because one day Jesus Christ is coming back, and, he knew that one day, there would be a new heaven and there would be a new earth, and that, we would be able to dwell in the kingdom of heaven. And so he sent his son, because there is a greater vision. He sees ahead. He sees the latter day. He sees the end, before we even see the end, he sees the end. You think about situations like he asked Ezekiel, can these dry bones live? He asked Ezekiel, can these dry bones live? Why? Because he already saw a vision of the dry bones being able to live. He asked him that, can the dry bone live? He already saw, the dry bones living. Ezekiel just had to see what he saw, and, a lot of the times when, God gives us a vision, we just need to be able to see what he sees, even if we can't really see it. Because, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of the things not seen. It's things not seen, by faith, with, Noah, it talks about how by faith, Noah built an ark, because it was going to flood. But he's like, but no one had ever seen the rain. No one had ever seen, all those other things. No one had, ever seen, it had never rained before in Noah's time. None of that stuff had happened before. I think about when God told me to leave college, like, I had never seen my family be restored. I've never seen them be healed. I could have left college and God be like, hey, I'm going to heal your family. And I've been like, you must be out of your mind. How are you going to heal my family? I had never seen that happen before. So, it took a great step of faith for me to truly believe God, to hear him say, hey, I'm going to start healing your family, and you're just going to have to trust me. And, your ministry is going to come together. You're just going to have to trust me, you're just going to have to trust me, because one of the reasons why I had left is because I kept going into the store, and everybody that I saw, driving down the street or in the stores, I saw is as a soul, and are they going to heaven or hell? And God's like, I'm going to help you to help people in life, you just have to trust me and step out on faith. And that's all I had to do, by faith, step out and trust Christ. And, that's what we have to do. If, God has a vision for everybody's life, a personal vision for your life and what he wants to do in your life. And if you just trust in the vision that he's showing you, and like Saul, when you see that, God is speaking to you, when you hear that he's speaking to you, ask him, Lord, what it is that you want me to do, and be like Peter, Peter, if it's you, bid me to come, then go, step out on faith, faith without works is dead, step out in action and start doing the things in which it is that God called you to do. Because for so long, I remember there was a point in time where people kept telling me, Jazz, like, we see you preaching, but what, like, you're not the same people who, watched me step out on faith to follow Christ for the loans. Like, we don't see your actions. What do you mean? Do you see me flying halfway across the country like a crazy woman? Like, where do you not see these actions? Like, do you see me quitting college to follow Jesus? Like, I had to, like, it got to a point where, like, I was babysitting a little girl because God saw that a little girl, watching one little baby girl, was more important than my degree in social work, because she was more important than, like, it's just amazing, and then people will be like, well, we don't see your faith, like, how do you not see it? Like at some point I'm just like, okay, well, I could have been in school, like getting my degree, but God sees this little girl more important. I could, I went halfway to California, sat and had lunch with a homeless man. Who knows when the last time someone sat down and ate a meal with him, and talked to him about Christ. Who knows when the last time someone sat down and had a meal with him and talked to him and then just turned him away. Who knows? So, we have to know that faith without works is dead, and when God gives us a vision, we need to step out and listen to the vision. And there may be some types of separation in the vision, but you have to trust God, because though the vision tarry, wait for it, because it will come to pass. And people will be afraid, because it will come to pass, because a lot of what is happening in my life, that people can't say anything now, because they're seeing that what I've been saying since the beginning is, it hasn't been me. It's been God, and God's the one who gave me the vision. So God can give you your own personal vision for your own life. You just have to trust in him. I did a video lesson on Write the Vision, Make It Plain. It talks about how God will give you the vision and plan for your life, and which it is that he has for your life. I will tag it underneath, and you guys just go sit down and take your time to watch the lesson, video for the plan that God has for your personal life. And just be careful who you share your vision with, and because there may come a time of separation, but make sure that you are hearing what it is that God wants for you in your life. And I thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until we meet again, all right, you guys, God bless. Peace. Has the vision that God has given you in your life taken some time? Has God's vision for your life came to pass even though it took a while? Have people have not believed you because they don't believe God is giving you the vision? Do you see what God sees even if you can't really see it by faith?